It's Missing Real with Mike Darrigo.
So what you're telling me is you don't know what this thing is?
That's right, Mr. President. We don't know what this thing is or what the heck kind of president you are. But welcome to the latest episode of Missing Real podcast, recorded under cover of COVID-19 during a quarantine. Yeah, you got nothing better to do than stay home and plug into some kind of entertainment device. So why not this one? Why not my podcast? Because we're all in this together, right? So you, my captive audience, get to enjoy yet another amazing dissection of a classic cult film. This one from 1997, Luc Besson's sci-fi extravaganza, The Fifth Element. Now, a lot of you film buffs probably know who Luc Besson is. He's this French guy who makes movies. Actually, yes, he's made some very excellent films prior to Fifth Element, including La Femme Nikita and, of course, Léon, the professional in the American market, as it is known, starring Jean Reno, another, Besson mainstay. But Fifth Element was a movie that showed a really bright, candy-colored version of the future, not very serious, not very bleak. It's kind of like, just like sprinkle some rainbows all over Blade Runner and take away all semblance of seriousness, and you've basically got a really fun romp through the future with a really bizarre cast, but everyone sort of fits the mold perfectly. And somehow, despite, a lot of divided opinions and polarization, as we call it, the movie did pretty damn well. And for a while, it was the biggest French export in cinematic history. So pretty good for you French folks, you came up with something better than salad dressing and fries. I'm very impressed. But yeah, this is a great film. I really enjoyed it. Took a little getting used to it, not knowing what to expect out of the thing. I mean, we thought it would be like some sort of modern day answer to Star Wars, whatever, for the 90s. Because there was really no other Star Wars but Star Wars in the 90s, or, up until maybe right after this movie. So it was inspired by the comics of Jean Giraud, also known as Mobius, and Jean-Claude Mézières. You gotta, part of my pronunciation, I don't know if I'm saying this French stuff correctly. I'm from Brooklyn, so, forgive, excusez-moi, je ne sais quoi. That's all I can say. So yeah, these guys, the artists who inspired Besson, were hired for some production design. One of them actually wanted to sue Besson for ripping off a lot of his shit. He's like, oh, that's right, I work with him now. So this movie, Fifth Element, has a kind of bizarre plot, and I'll try to convey most of it if I can, because it's still a bit jumbled. But yeah, it's all, about this mystical being who's supposed to save humankind from annihilation by this evil force in space. That's pretty much it, really. But it's a lot of fun along the way. It begins in the desert, somewhere like around Egypt, and temples and stuff in the middle of the desert. And we see Luke Perry in there as an assistant to this archaeologist guy who's like trying to decipher all these glyphs on the wall. And while he's doing that, this huge spaceship lands outside, and these huge metal suit beings start clanking towards the entranceway. Now, a word about the costumes, including these metal clanky suits. Everything that people wear in this film was designed by yet another French-sounding dude, Jean-Paul Gaultier, who you probably all know from all his runway shows and designing of models' clothes and stuff, if you look at models with clothes. So he designed all the costumes, and these robot suits were so huge and cumbersome, and the actors inside, or stunt folk, I guess, needed little mini TV monitors inside to see exactly where the hell they were walking. And they kind of just like shuffle very, very slowly. It's more like of a back and forth shuffle, and they waddle forward inch by inch. But anyway, it looked great on film, the way it's shot is fantastic. So these robo beings arrive, and they interrupt this archaeologist, and there's another priest there, that's trying to poison him because he's not supposed to discover what's behind this wall, but he's figuring things out. It's like, no, the secret is too precious. We must not allow it. So these alien dudes show up, and they stop him, and they give him this key, and he opens up the door, and there's this stuff inside. There's like a sacred box of something. It's the Fifth Element, and it's these precious stones and all these things that will figure into the plot later on. You don't need to know what the hell they are right now. Time not important, only life. So we cut forward like about 300 years later, and we're in the future, and the president is played by character actor Tiny Lister. He's the president. Very, very, curt and, doesn't take a lot of crap. And he has all these military guys working with him. And the casting of this movie includes some great sci-fi familiar faces, like Brian James, of course, was Leon in Blade Runner. And you've also got Al Matthews kicking around. That's Sergeant Apone from Aliens. All he's missing is his cigar. So these guys are in the movie. The president is like wondering, what is this huge threat that we see on the screen? There's this massive black planet that's threatening our existence. We don't know what it is. It's like, we're faced here with a Public Enemy album cover. What are we going to do, right? Should we drop some beats? Should we call Flavor Flav and, have him turn back the hands on his giant clock and stop this thing? We don't know what to do. But yeah, it's this big giant black planet. And of course, the first thing they do is they launch missiles into it, and it gets bigger. Can't really talk to it, unless you know the lyrics. But they figure out, what are we going to do about this thing? And we are introduced to Father Vito Cornelius, another actor who we've seen in all the epic films that we love, like Alien and Lord of the Rings. Of course, this would be Sir Ian Holm. We remember him as Ash. We remember him as Bilbo Baggins and all these great characters. So he's in there, and he's a priest, and he has to explain to the president, I know what this thing is, and what we must do to stop it.
You have 20 seconds.
And he talks for exactly 20 seconds to explain. But he pauses for a long time. I don't know how they did it. It must be the magic of editing. So he explains all this, expositional hullabaloo to tell us what's going on, and that this is pure evil, and we must combat it with the divine being. So this divine being is in transit, being carried along by our alien friends called the Mondoshoans. And they have some weird language that we don't understand. I don't know, maybe they communicate through mime, although then they would be called Mummenshans, I guess. But yeah, they're flying around, and they're carrying all this precious cargo that we're talking about, and they're being attacked by Mangalores, another alien race. Mangalores, not to be confused with Mandalorians, if you follow. So this ship gets attacked and presumably destroyed, and we think all is lost. And, there's somebody else out there in the universe who's trying to get their hands on this precious cargo. And we're going to find out who he is very soon, aren't we, Nah, yes, we are. But first, let's introduce ourselves to the hero of the story, Corbin Dallas, who is played by Bruce Willis with a bleach blonde hairdo and some very questionable orange tank tops. Day glow color stuff. This is like, eons away from Die Hard. Yeah, Bruce Willis is in the movie. Originally I think Besson wanted his buddy Jean Reno, which would have been great to have like Leon as Corbin Dallas, or even Mel Gibson was approached, but he turned it down. Too bad for him, he could have had a career or something. Here we got Bruce Willis, and he did this movie for a bit of a discount of his normal rate because he really thought it would be fun to do. He enjoyed the script. It took a while to put this all together, but together it was put. And we're introduced to Bruce Willis in his crappy apartment. He answers the doorbell. He looks out his little peephole and he sees an empty hallway, but when he opens the door, give me the cash! Some crazy fucking guy out there with a hat on and a picture of the empty hallway on the front of the hat. Very clever, right? But Bruce Willis outsmarts him and gets his weapon and all that and collects it. Really great. So Bruce Willis is a cab driver, and his dispatcher is just a voice you hear over the phone, character named Finger, who's actually an uncredited Vin Diesel. You might have been able to figure that out, but, one gritty voice talking to one mumbly voice. It's kind of hard to tell who everybody is. Yeah. So we got Bruce Willis in here. We got Vin Diesel in here. It's turned into like another, almost like a Fast and Furious type movie already so far. But no, there's none of that crap. There's no driving. Pretty much no wheels ever touch the ground. It's all flying. It's all spaceships and stuff. Even the cabs. They fly through space or through the streets on various altitudes, and nobody crashes. It's like it's miraculous. So anyways, we think that all these precious things were lost, and what we recover is just this little robot hand. And, the scientists have the hand, and they start reconstructing with this knitting program thing, creating matter out of what little bit of DNA is left in there, and we end up with the full naked body of Milla Jovovich. And Milla Jovovich was one of over 8,000 actresses who auditioned for this role of the Supreme Being, Lilu. And one of the actresses who thankfully was not accepted was Elizabeth Berkley, because how would you like to see Showgirls mixed with Fifth Element? I mean, it's pretty far-fetched already, but, Elizabeth Berkley already has her defining role, and we gave Milla an opening into the world of action movies, and Milla was actually doing a little acting before this. She was in Dazed and Confused, but she also had a little side career going as a singer. And in 1994 released her album The Divine Comedy, just billed as Milla. And she had a great kind of cool style, and the music that I always used to love listening to, like all this gothy kind of 4AD, this Mortal Coil, Cocteau Twins kind of stuff. But yeah, she had this rather Kate Bushy, Tori Amos-y kind of style, and really good stuff. Some of her songs actually had videos shot for them, and she was pretty decent with that. I was kind of hoping like she'd continue doing that, but the movies kind of took over. And of course, she had a modeling career. She had all kind of stuff going on, Milla. So she is Lilu, the supreme being, who speaks some indecipherable language that was invented by her and Luc Besson, and they even wrote letters to each other in this fake language. They ended up coming up with about maybe like 200 words, and by the end of the shoot, they were able to have complete conversations with each other in this babble speak. Pretty amazing, pretty impressive. Take that, Klingons. We have Lilu escaping from the science lab through this golden aluminum foil wall, although she's supposed to have superhuman strength, so we have to assume this thing was like, many, many layers of a indestructible alloy, right? She goes out into the ledge of the building, and outside it looks like Blade Runner, except it's daylight, sunshine, very colorful, cars floating around in lanes of traffic as far as the eye can see. We got McDonald's trucks going by outside, so we assume that if human race has been eating McDonald's all these years, McDonald's is still around, humans are still around, can't be that bad for you, right? So yeah, anyway, she's out on the ledge, and the security is hunting her, and she jumps, and you think she's gonna fall to her death in this very beautiful shot. But she lands in Bruce Willis's cab and starts babbling. Yeah, big bada boom. What are you trying to tell me, lady? So he instantly is smitten with her and falls in love despite the age difference. He helps her resist arrest because he just feels bad for her. He's got a lot of points on his license, but he doesn't care. We gotta have a movie. We gotta have an adventure here. So he takes her in, and eventually she will be discovered by Father Cornelius because he's looking for her. She is the supreme being that we're all hoping will be around to save the universe. First now, we have to take a little detour and we have to meet our villain. And this would be the one and only Gary Oldman, who we had already seen in Leon the Professional, playing Agent Stansfield. And the reason why he's in Fifth Element, essentially, is because he kind of owed Luc Besson a favor. Luc Besson helped finance Gary Oldman's directorial debut, Nil by Mouth, and he kind of owed him a favor, so he just took this role without even reading the script. Probably not a good idea. But when he finds out what kind of a weird-ass villain he's playing, and that the influence for this villain seemed to be a combo of Bugs Bunny and Ross Perot, he pretty much played it to the hilt. And although Oldman really does not recollect this role with any sort of relish, he can't bat it. He says, it's still pretty damn amazing, and he has an amazing monologue, which I'll do for you shortly. But a little more about Gary Oldman, all right, because he's just so amazing. And I had the distinct privilege of meeting Gary Oldman for a few moments anyway at a screening of Darkest Hour before he got the Oscar for. But after watching that movie, you pretty much knew it was his. He got it. It was a lot of people from like SAG and the film industry were there, and I was invited as a special guest by good friend Grace, and I owe her eternally for me meeting Gary Oldman. But meeting Gary Oldman for just a few moments anyway, I just asked him if he was getting tired of playing villains or how he would have felt about playing a Bond villain. Even though we already had a Blofeld, I thought he could have been a Bond villain, right? That's another thing friends of mine have been clamoring for. But if you're going to be a villain, you might as well be a Bond villain, right? But yeah, he plays just about everything else under the sun, under any sun. So he played Zorg here, Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg. But the cool thing about Gary Oldman in person is that, there was a lot of people, in the auditorium that wanted to talk to him, and his two bodyguards or handlers or whatever they were sort of like, hurrying him up to leave. It's like, oh, no, there's still all these people, waiting to say hello. I want to get a chance to talk to everyone. Oh, Mr. Oldman, we're on a tight schedule. Everyone! And he did. He spoke to everyone, including me. Thank you, Gary. So yeah, back to Zorg. All right. So, Gary Oldman has so much talent. He's a musician. He played piano, did like Immortal Beloved. He even recorded a duet with David Bowie, for God's sakes. So he's like very, very, involved in the arts and music and film. And, he'll just take some scenery and chew it up as he does here. And, because I love it so much, I would like to do his famous dialogue. The only reason why this is even like a credible role, really. I mean, this saves it all, honestly. Edit out these crinkle noises later. So yeah, there's this great scene in Fifth Element when Zorg meets with Cornelius, and he gives him a little spiel about this monologue. It's kind of like, it's based on The Parable of the Broken Window, 1850, by French economist Frédéric Bastiat. So, there's an awful lot of knowledge in such a seemingly dumb movie, isn't there? You gotta really read between the lines. So here we go. Just indulge me, okay? What else are you gonna do? Go out? Life, which you so humbly serve, comes from destruction, disorder, and chaos. Now, take this empty glass. Here it is. Peaceful, serene, boring, but if it is destroyed, look at all these little things, so busy now. Notice how each one is useful. What a lovely ballet ensues, so full of form and color. Now think about all those people who created them, technicians, engineers, hundreds of people who will be able to feed their children tonight so those children can grow up big and strong and have teeny children of their own, so on and so forth, thus adding to the great chain of life. Thank you. I'll take my Oscar now. So right after that, he eats his cherry, he starts choking on it, and Cornelius has to slap him on the back. You saved my life, and so I'll spare yours. You're a monster, Zog. I know. So it's a great scene. Of course, I couldn't memorize that whole damn thing. I'm sorry. I had to do it from paper. Yeah, pardon me. I'm sure Gary Oldman had to do it with paper for a little while, too. So yeah, but he could have improvised the whole friggin' thing for all I know. I just found out that it was written by that French economy guy. So yeah, it's intelligence buried in stupidity. But you gotta dig deep. That's kind of like the whole basis behind my podcast, if you really think about it, which I don't expect you to. Please don't. Alright, so yeah, Zorg is looking for the stones. Says, bring me those stones. Not making Keith like you did last time. Now I want the stones, okay? The stones. So he wants these magical, they're just blocks of wood, but they all have importance. And Zorg is actually in a little bit of an alliance with this black planet evil entity thing for some reason. I don't know, because he's like a powerful businessman. He owns this big company and industry, and he could fire all these people. So he fires 1 million. Fire 1 million. And one of the millions fired is Bruce Willis. So he gets his discharge slip from the cab company at some point. So he has to get these stones. The president is informed that the stones are in the custody of Diva Plava Laguna. Plava Laguna means Blue Lagoon, which is a resort in Croatia that Luc Besson stayed at, and it also happens to be a place in Return to the Blue Lagoon that Milla Jovovich acted in, if you really want this extra useless trivia. So yeah, we're trying to find out how we're going to get our hands on these stones, and Bruce Willis is kind of recruited to go get them, because he has a military history, and he's like the most qualified person there is to do this mission, and blah, 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 and because he doesn't have a job anymore. So, he finds out he gets fired when he's hanging out at home, and he gets some Chinese delivery from a floating schooner piloted by Kim Chan, another famous actor, very, very iconic guy. Gives him his food there, and reads his fortune. You are fired! At this point, he's met with Lee Lu and Father Cornelius and his little sidekick altar boy David, who always jumps. He's very jittery, gets the shit scared out of himself at every turn, and Milla is constantly taking her clothes off and changing, and whoosh, everyone turns around like, they really made it, didn't they? Yeah, pretty good. And Bruce Willis is already trying to flirt with her and kiss her, and she yells at him in this weird language that he still doesn't understand. He just knows bada boom, right? Yeah, bada boom, big bada boom. So they have a big connection already. So now, Lee Lu learns how to speak English. He watches all these videos really quickly and learns Kung Fu, and blah, 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 and eats chicken. So there is a rigged contest so that Bruce Willis can go to this place where the Diva is performing. It's on this floating cruise ship in space called Floston Paradise, and he wins the contest hosted by Ruby Rod. This is the one little sore spot in the movie at first, because I could not stand Chris Tucker's character. But now, after a while, you realize he's just so fucking zany and so inspired that he just works perfectly. He's a great foil for Bruce Willis's grumpiness and shit. And you have Floston Paradise with me, Ruby Rod. And it's so over the top, and he's got this inspiration. Basically, he is inspired by Prince and Michael Jackson, with his costumes and his dancing. What was that? You had nothing. Could you pretend you have a pulse next time? Sorry, yeah, so he's a really over-the-top, flamboyant character, and originally the filmmakers really did want Prince to do this role, and they actually were in talks with him, and he was looking at some artwork for the costume design with Jean-Paul Gaultier, and apparently he got so pissed off with Jean-Paul Gaultier because he misinterpreted something Jean-Paul said in French. When he was talking about a fake ass part of a costume, he was calling it, in French, of course, a faux cul, and Prince was thinking he's saying fuck you to me. So that's it. Prince was pissed. He just peeled off in his little red Corvette, and that was the end of that. No more Prince. Such controversy, right? So instead of Prince, we got Chris Tucker, who could pretty much do the whole Prince thing and make probably a lot less money at the same time and not perform as many songs, and it's still great, Was Chris Tucker's performance okay? Yeah! Alright, so yeah, it was alright. So he's annoying the shit out of Bruce Willis. Is there anything you want to say, K-Man? Swell. Are we green? Alright, listen, I don't want you to talk to me this entire trip. I want you to leave me alone. Are you green? So we're green. So he's very, very annoying, but he's funny later on. It's pretty damn good. This pairing is better than Rush Hour with Jackie Chan, at least. It's much, much better than that. The airport, we have the multipass. There's a whole lot of people trying to pursue Bruce Willis and his fake wife, Lilu. Multipass. Yeah, Lilu Dallas. She knows it's a multipass, honey. Come on. And there's all these other people trying to impersonate Corbin Dallas, and they all get arrested. One of them is played by Tricky, the musician who was in Massive Attack. Yeah, he's got this really deep voice. Yeah, I'm Corbin Dallas. I don't know if he sings a lot in Massive Attack, but it ain't gonna sound that good. Yeah, but he screws up, and Zorg is like, I am very disappointed. Blows him to smithereens. I said, I want those stones. He has like this meeting with the Mangalores. Am I getting the right race? Yeah. Zorg meets with the Mangalores, and he's in cahoots with them as well. And he's demonstrating his new weapon, and it's got a flamethrower, it's got the repeat recall function, got the net gun, everything you love. Nah, I just want those stones. There was supposed to be 4 stones, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 stones. When he gets really pissed, sometimes his accent slips up. I don't know. He just didn't care. He just played the role, however. So yeah, Zorg is very pissed. He just can't get the stones. Every time he sends his henchmen out, they keep screwing up. But anyway, Bruce Willis is finally at this concert with Ruby Rhod and sitting there and waiting for the Diva to appear on stage. So this Diva was a huge mystery, right? Nobody knew what she was going to look like. And the character has a very interesting backstory to see. So yeah, this Diva, the original actress who was supposed to play her failed to show up, so Luc Besson just recruited his fiancée, Maywen, a tall woman, and she couldn't sing the shit, but she knew, she had to practice like crazy for 30 times a day for 3 months to actually lip sync this correctly, because this is a crazy aria that was actually sung by soprano Inva Mula, and when Inva Mula saw the sheet music for this, she was like, this is impossible for the human voice to sing, because there's just notes that you just cannot, skip between with human register. But she recorded every single note individually, and then it was just mixed together and sounds really cool. For a while I thought it was Sarah Brightman or something like that singing this. It kind of sounds like a Sarah Brightman kind of song, but it ain't. So the Diva is this blue woman with these tentacles coming off of her head, very Star Warsy, and she does this performance. It's very beautiful, and then it turns into this really crazy pop song, and these Mariah Carey dog notes and stuff that you can't hear, and it's pretty cool. And then there's this big shootout when they get invaded, and Ruby Rhod is screaming his head off during the fight. Come on, man, come on, what do you want me to do?
Here, you hold on to this.
And there's gunfire and things blowing up. Whining like a little bitch. But it's all part of the comic relief, right? I guess after a while it doesn't grate on you quite so strongly as it did. And meanwhile, Lilu is fighting for her life against all these other aliens. She knows a lot of tricks. She knows some gymnastics and some kung fu. And a lot of it was faked with an artificial leg because she couldn't kick that high. But, let's not take away from the magic of the movie here, It's Lilu. It's Milla. It's great. The whole thing with the shootout, and the Diva takes a bullet and she falls down. And Bruce Willis, of course, has front row seats, so he has to help.
What do you want me to do?
The stones are in me. All right, don't get all philosophical. Where are the rocks? Come on, tell me where are the rocks. And he has to reach inside and pull them out of her abdomen, and there's gooey blue gelatinous shit all over them. But they're the stones, so he puts them in a bag. The poor Diva dies, and she tells him she's more fragile than you realize. But the fifth element, Lilu, is destined for things, including maybe Bruce Willis's bed. So there's a lot of shooting and stuff. There's this massive explosion in the lobby. It's probably the biggest explosion ever shot indoors on film at this point, and it took about 30 minutes to put the fire out. But thankfully, everyone was safe. All the rubber costumes didn't burn, and most of these alien monsters had goggles on because just too many makeup effects to really put on everyone. There was so many extras, and Jean-Paul Gaultier was checking every single stitch on every single extra in every scene. Very dedicated. French and fashion, you don't mess around with that shit. But another interesting thing is these Mangalores, these aliens with their crazy facial movement shit, they were actually the animatronics used on these faces were used later on, recycled in 1999 for the Nemodians in the Phantom Menace. Those are those crappy aliens like Newt Gunray and the Nightosia Highness, horribly politically incorrect caricatures that we won't even get into right now. We're not here to skewer George Lucas and his horrible choices in filmmaking. But yeah, they were used later on in Phantom Menace, and they still look stupid. They didn't really advance things much at all. But yeah, then let's see, there's a lot of running around, shooting and stuff, and Lilu is bleeding to death, and they gotta take her back to Earth and go to that temple that we saw 300 years ago. It's still in pretty good condition, all dusty and everything. So they go into the temple with Ruby Rhod and the priest and everything, and there's the 4 stones, and what do? And they correspond to the elements, wind blows, fire burns. All right, so yeah, figuring out that air opens up the air one, you get a drop of water on the water one, and I ain't got no fire. So you got one match. It almost goes out. Light the fire. Put a little dirt on the earth one. We're all set. So what's the 5th element? We don't know what it is yet. It's Lilu, and she's in Bruce Willis's arms about to die. He's like, tell her, Corbin. What? Tell her what? Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. No, not that. Something else. Something more romantic than that. The fate of humanity depends upon you.
Okay, yeah. Eat it, Planet Hollywood.
Bruce Willis has nothing good to say until finally, he has to just kiss her and prove that he loves her. And then the light shoots up out of her and it fires up into space. It looks like the ending of Life Force almost, except, nobody's naked and there's no vampires running through London. But the laser shoots up into the sky and it zaps that big black planet and it freezes it in space. So it's just like a dead moon hanging up in orbit. It's probably a way, way closer than the actual Earth's moon. It'll probably fall on Earth one day and then we'll have to do a sequel to Armageddon. But that's later. So the movie's kind of over. It's like when everything's all good and the little altar boy guy goes, yes! Ah! Wrong with you! Get out of here! Ruby Rod off to his entourage and stuff. One little disappointment in the end is that the hero and villain never even square off face to face. They never meet at all. Like they just pass briefly one door and another. And Zorg ends up getting blown up by his own bomb. He's like a complete idiot. He's just like, oh no. Idiot. So in the end, they're in the recovery room. Bruce Willis and Milla are inside this recovery tank, and the press wants to meet them, and the president is there. Oh, I want to get a statement. I want to interview them right now. And they're not ready yet. But they're inside naked making love while this song starts playing, this Eric Serra song. We all thought it was Peter Gabriel or something, but it's not Peter Gabriel. It's not In Your Eyes. Bruce Willis isn't holding a boombox over his head while Lilu looks out the window. It's just this pretty okay other good song by Eric Serra, who did a lot of soundtracks for Luc Besson movies, including Les Femmes Nikita, which is pretty good. You should definitely listen to that. So yeah, The Fifth Element, it ended there. It's like a very happy ending. The world is saved, and I don't know what Lilu's gonna do. I don't know if she's gonna get a job. She could probably audition for some Resident Evil movies or something. That might be a good idea. Or do some more albums, I guess. And interestingly enough, after all the shit that May Wen went through, the Diva chick, during the shoot of Fifth Element, Luc Besson dumps his fiancée, falls in love with Milla Jovovich, they get married, they do the Joan of Arc movie 2 years later, and then they divorce, and then Milla marries Paul W.S. Anderson, the director of the Resident Evil series, and that was a good call. And those are great movies, too. I love Paul W.S. Anderson stuff. But as far as Fifth Element's continuation, there could be a sequel someday. I don't know. All I've ever seen since was this really good Indian buffet in Jacksonville, Florida, called The Fifth Element that I really enjoyed going to, not just because of its name. And, the food was all just really, it was Indian food. They didn't serve Blue Diva chops or anything like that. And in 2017, Luc Besson did another movie based on those comics and Mobius things, an original comic back then, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. And Valerian was very cool. It had a lot more special effects than Fifth Element did. It had an even more ridiculous and unfollowable plot. The cast wasn't quite so phenomenal, although we did have Rutger Hauer, I think, as the president of the colonies or universe or whatever it was. And we had Dane DeHaan, who resembles a sleep-deprived Leo DiCaprio, to me. Also starred Cara Delevingne, very French-sounding gal, Clive Owen, and Rihanna. And Rihanna's turn was even more goofy than Chris Tucker's Ruby Rod. But not quite as memorable, unfortunately. But yeah, really great movie if you like special effects and really weird stuff that's kind of more imaginative than all the recent Star Wars things. But I hope there is a sequel to Fifth Element. It would be great. I just don't know. It has to be really well written. And Luc Besson had started writing that screenplay at age 16. It took him 22 years for the damn movie to get made. And I'm just glad that it did. But the inspiration, those Mobius and Jean-Claude Van Damme, Mézières, Montserrat, whoever's comics, were very influential in science fiction. Even George Lucas is most likely cribbing a lot of stuff off of those to do Star Wars. I believe that Darth Vader's costume and Leia's gold bikini and a lot of other shit in Star Wars was almost completely ripped off of those comics. So, it all comes around. There's no imagination anymore. But anything Luc Besson did with the Sci-Fi, I was very happy with it. And, Valerian is good. I don't think that deserves a whole Missing Real episode, but Fifth Element, absolutely. It is a classic. I think everybody loves it, no matter how weird and annoying parts of it are. It's just there's nothing else quite like it out there. So I hope you like this episode and you watch Fifth Element again, because, I will. It's very cheesy and fun, kind of like Flash Gordon, the Sam Jones Flash Gordon movie, which we should be seeing soon in another episode, I hope. But thank you. Thank you for listening. You didn't have to, and, I hope that this global pandemic is over soon, but even if it is, I want you to keep listening to the podcast, because it's good for you, all right? And we don't know what the cure is yet for the coronavirus, but, a little laughter and stupidity can't hurt, can it? So thanks again, all you Missing Real listeners, and I'll be back again soon with another one. That was the best show I ever did. What do you guys think? I am very disappointed.